Assalamu alaikum. I will share with you some good examples of dialogues. I've chosen different extracts from the dialogues of my students, and today I'm going to see and I'm going to spot the different elements that they have used in their dialogues which contribute to making their dialogues more effective and more pleasing. Let's have a look and spot the different elements used in the dialogues to make them look more fantastic, more realistic and more pleasing. So here this is the first dialogue which is between a teacher and students, and the first thing that you would notice over here is the description of the place as well as the description of the characters being given. The actions of the characters are also being explained in quite detail. You may notice in the parenthesis this is the description of the place being given, and then the characters have been described. So this is the dialogue between Farwa and Kinza, and name of the characters are being incorporated within the dialogue, and they are not written in an isolated manner alongside. So you would also notice over here in the second parenthesis the character and his and her actions are being described, that she is constantly looking at the clock and probably waiting, and suddenly the clock strikes 8:30, bell rings and the teacher comes in the class. The greetings, and again this is the action described in parenthesis, and then there is the use of the second thing that you notice is the use of the idioms, that the how the idioms are being incorporated into this dialogue suitably, contextually and effectively. You would also notice the emotions, the exclamations being described over here. Again, the actions of the characters, they go hand in hand with the dialogue, and they add to the more, I would say that the actions being described and the situation being described, or what's happening around being described in parentheses, that add to more effectiveness. Then again the actions alongside they go on. This is the second dialogue, and this happens between the teacher and a student, that also start with the description of the characters, and as well as the place has been described where the meeting occurs. The noticeable thing in this dialogue is the use of the dialogue tags. So instead of using or repeating the word said too often, different dialogue tags or a variety of dialogue tags are being used, like replied, responded, boasted. The second thing which is noticeable is the use of the question tags. We have met after a long time, didn't we? And the answer comes, Afifa smiled, yes, we are. So you may see the use of the question tag and the short form response, which is a very important marker of spoken interaction. They are also being used here. Tug of war, the idiom being placed quite suitably, feather in your cap. And again, may I know your choice of career? May not I? Yes, you may. The use of the question tag and the short form response is there. Moving on in dialogue number 3, we would see very vividly and effectively and beautifully the place has been described, as well as the character has been described. So this is a golden haired, blue eyed and fully dressed gentleman was sitting alone on the bench. The man was enjoying the pleasant and peaceful natural sight around. The second character is a young teenager boy who joined him. So the description of the place as well as that of the characters is being given. The other thing that you would notice here is, okay, the most noticeable thing in this dialogue is the use of the emotions and the feelings of the characters, which are tagged along with the dialogue tag, like asked surprisingly, replied in a carefree tone. Then the question tag is the boy responded, and oh, this is the exclamation being used over here, as well as the actions being described alongside, which add to make the dialogue sound more realistic. The use of the question tag is there. There is no one else sitting with me on the bench. Is there? No, there is not. And the boy replied in a carefree tone. The actions, they go alongside with the dialogue, and the idioms are also being placed quite appropriately into the dialogue, which are pollution is in swing, bolt from the blue, and the actions being described. Said the gentleman, putting his hands on his ears. Next, you may see the gentleman had disappointment on his face. You may see the actions being described in parentheses. The use of the question tag, aren't we? Yes, we are. That's there. then the emotions, the feelings being described by using the exclamation mark, the use of idioms, said the gentleman cheerlessly, the use of the feelings, the way the person has uttered the thing, this has also been described effectively. This is a dialogue that takes place among friends about the initial days of hostel life, and in the very beginning, the characters and their names are being introduced. The characters are being described who they are, and their names are being introduced. And the thing noticeable in this dialogue is the use of the short utterances, which is quite significant, because we in a spoken interaction, this really happens, that very long kind of utterances and very long interactions, they take place between individuals. Rather, most of the time, the short utterances occur whenever there is a spoken interaction or conversation among friends. So the thing which is noticeable over here is the use of dialogue tags. We see that the dialogue tags being used over here, they are stated, asked, and responded, replied, admitted, whispered. And alongside these dialogue tags, the emotions and feelings of the characters are also being described, like Fussy delightfully said this thing, Bilal sarcastically said this thing, and he added to this thing, and he said this after seeing some other individual. So the other thing that you would notice over here is the use of some idioms being incorporated quite appropriately. And we notice, like here, Zishan replied aggressively. The dialogue tag as well as the way something is being uttered is being described by the writer. Bilal explained, stated, asked with narrow eyes, as well as the use of the idioms lend a hand, to do away with. These are appropriately being placed. This dialogue happens between cousins among cousins about the women education, and the description of characters and their names are being introduced in the very beginning, and then their names are being incorporated within the dialogue. Instead of their names being written isolatedly, they are being incorporated effectively. The thing noticeable over here is the use of contractions, which is also a very significant and important marker of spoken interaction. Okay, I'll make it for you. It's not I will make it for you. Rather, this is I'll make it for you, and then didn't. So the use of the contractions, and then the use of the different dialogue tags like replied, stated, explained, stated. So these are there, and as well as the emotions and the feelings. Writer has also tried to describe the emotions and the feelings of the characters by adding them alongside the dialogue tags, like Anisa angrily said this thing, Jamila hesitantly replied, and somebody explained, as well as the use of the idioms. The appropriate use of the idioms is also there. It's like a fool's paradise for me. It will be a tug of war for me. He has gone for a bird to take a bird's eye view, and things like this. This is a dialogue between two friends on the topic of newspaper and television, and the significant and the noticeable thing in this dialogue is the use of the appropriate use of the idioms, as well as the use of contractions. It's and a piece of cake brings something to light, and then the use of the question tag. Yes, of course. Don't you? No, I don't like. No, I don't. And then you may see the use of the idioms sparingly being used. This is a dialogue between two friends on the preparation of exams, and here too the scene has been described that the school bell was ringing when Muzammil entered the school hall. So this is a conversation that takes place in the school hall. Noticeable over here is also the use of dialogue tag yelled. And alongside this dialogue tag, you may notice the action of the characters. Muzammil yelled while walking through the main gate of the school. Babar turned his head towards him. So actions of the characters are being given alongside the different dialogue tags, as well as you may notice the use of the pauses. These two, this is the indicator of the pauses. And you may see here too, mine's all right, but pause. And is there any problem? Babar interrupted. Interruptions are also there. The pauses are there. The hesitation markers are there. you may see a. So the hesitation markers are also there, and very effectively the actions of the characters are being placed. Muzammil insisted while sitting on bench in front of the classroom. Babur opened his notebook and said, these preparations are the main problem areas for me. And you may also notice the different dialogue tags like yelled. We have noticed this was yelled, explained, interrupted, insisted, advised, agreed, sighed. So the very short utterances, and in these short utterances we will notice the use of the hesitation markers, the use of the pauses, the use of the interruptions, as well as the use of the different variety of dialogue tags. They add to the effectiveness of this dialogue, and that actually help making this dialogue more sound more pleasing, more interesting, and more realistic. And this is the last extract taken from a dialogue which occurs between two friends on the choice of career. And in this too, we would notice the use of different dialogue tags like questioned, asked, answered, replied, responded. And we would also notice the use of contractions, it's, don't. So these things add to the more effectiveness of the dialogue, and that also help making dialogue sound more effective and good. And what we noticed in these dialogues is firstly that the writers of these dialogues, they have tried to explain the scene, they have tried to explain the situation, they have tried to describe the places, the people, and the contractions. They have made use of the contractions in question tags and short form responses, which are very significant when it comes to the spoken interaction. And when you insert these characteristics of the spoken interaction into the dialogues, that help your dialogue, that actually make your dialogue to look more realistic, to seem more realistic and more pleasing for the reader. And the use of the variety of dialogue tags have been used, and alongside those dialogue tags, the emotions and the feelings of the characters are beautifully being described. And then there are the interruptions and the hesitation markers being used by the writers of these dialogues, as well as the idioms are used appropriately and contextually, which add to the more effectiveness of our dialogue. And hope that these examples would bring more clarity about dialogue writing, and that would actually help you to produce more effective dialogues. And thank you for listening.